There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free? Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along.
This is The Negro Speaks of Rivers, one of my earliest poems written in 1920, just after I came out of high school. The way this poem came to be written was that I was going to Mexico to visit my father, who lived in Mexico City, and on the train going across the Mississippi River, just outside St. Louis, I looked out the window and I saw this great muddy river flowing down toward the heart of the South, and I began to think about what this river meant to the Negro people, how, in a sense, our history was linked to this river, how in slavery time my grandmother told me that to be sold down the Mississippi was one of the worst things that could happen to a Negro slave. And then I remembered that I'd read about Abraham Lincoln going down the Mississippi as a young man, and he went on a raft to New Orleans, and he saw human beings bought and sold in the slave market there, and he was so horrified by this that he never forgot it. And many years later, of course, we know that it was Lincoln who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, as the train went on into the gathering dusk, because it had been about sunset when we crossed the river, I took my father's letter out of my pocket and began to write down on the back of his letter this poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of the Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers.
Well, that was a lucky find. Langston Hughes was a prolific poet associated with the early 20th century outpouring of African-American art and culture known as the Harlem Renaissance, producing over the course of his career over a dozen books of poetry, along with many works of fiction and non-fiction. He also translated a number of works, including Gypsy Ballads by Federico Garcia Lorca. His first two books of poetry received critical acclaim, and he won the Harmon Gold Award for his novel Not Without Laughter. The Negro Speaks of Rivers speaks to its audience with a charming, if slightly gawky grandiosity attributable, perhaps, to the relative youth and inexperience of its gifted writer. In exactly 12 lines, all of Western civilization is encompassed. After associating rivers with the blood in human veins, we are taken to earliest Mesopotamia, to the ancient Congo, to dynastic Egypt, and finally to 19th century Mississippi. The narrator says that he knows rivers, that his soul has grown deep like the rivers. To my ear, this narrator is not one man, but a race entire, both the race of Africans living in America and of all humans who have ever lived upon the earth.
I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired